Yeah, Tony, it's funny because few quarterbacks will play against an opponent twice, both home and away during a career, 4 times, 2 home, 2 away. I was working on some posts the other day and was looking up pictures of JT Barrett playing playing Penn State. And I was getting a lot of the pictures from 2 times ago, the 2014 game in Happy Valley, not the game last year that they lost, but both games were similar in the sense that the Buckeyes were a heavy favorite. They broke out to a huge lead. They blew the lead. Well, of course, in 2014, fortunately for them, they hung on. They pulled it out in overtime and were the better team. And JT Barrett had a very marginal game in the passing game, but won the game with his legs. Then, of course, what happened last year with the blocked field goal, the blocked punt, and Ohio State doing next to nothing on offense in the second half with all the offensive line issues. JT Barrett's played in a lot of big games. The national narrative's not necessarily fair that he's lost big games or that they have to be titanic games to register on the national radar. So it's, of course, well, he's the guy that got hurt before they won the national title. And really since then didn't get a chance because of the Michigan State loss to prove how good they were, even though he showed up against Michigan and Notre Dame to close out the season. And then, of course, last season, the Clemson loss is hanging around his neck. So he is seemingly improved in the past week, but it's, again, for a fifth-year senior, what are you going to do against Penn State? And his legacy is going to partially hang on this game.
Yeah, and the legacy sort of started with Penn State in 2014 because, as you said, he did not play well. But Urban Meyer looks back on that game because he won that game in overtime, double overtime with a sprained knee. So he was hurt, and he played through that, and he was running. And, he just lifted the team up and led them, and that's something that, Urban Meyer, he speaks of it in the same vein he speaks of Tim Tebow, in his speech after the Ole Miss loss and whatever year that was. So this is something that he always talks about. So, I mean, this is something that's where JT Barrett's legacy started. And you're right. Meyer has said that quarterbacks, he doesn't care about stats. He doesn't judge quarterbacks by stats. He judges them by, their wins, the trophies they hoist. And Barrett, the only trophies he's hoisted, that he's put up, been like the silver football, which is an individual award. And so he knows that Barrett's legacy is tied to championships. If he doesn't get that, be at a Big Ten championship, that's what they're shooting for. And then anything after that is a bonus. But if you don't have that, then you're just a guy who put up a bunch of stats. And, at Ohio State, sure, that's great. But it's not like there's a long line of quarterback history here to where, now you're better than Drew Brees. Well, maybe in the Big Ten you've put up some numbers, but they don't have that lineage at Ohio State and quarterback. So it'd be different to be maybe the best running back in Ohio State history and never have a national championship. But there are quarterbacks here, much worse quarterbacks who have national titles. And so, he needs that trophy to sort of cement his legacy. And I asked Urban on Wednesday if it was fair to JT to call this the biggest game in his career. And he said it's not fair because he's had bigger games and he's played well against our rivals. That's what Urban Meyer calls Michigan, so he's played well in big games in the past, and to put this game above any others, he said what they talk about is, how often Penn State blitzes on first and second down, what coverages they're in when they do this. That's all they're talking about. They're not talking about, JT, you need this one for your belt. You've got a notch and it's empty, or, anything like that. They don't talk about that. They talk about, the X's and O's. And, maybe on Friday they'll talk about something else, but until they get the X's and O's down, there's nothing else to talk about for them.
Tony, as you know, it's become so cliche among successful coaches to say block out the noise that we almost get past that and don't listen to it. But it's entirely true. They focus on the process. What do we need to do to get better today? It's Monday. We're not going to worry about Friday and Saturday. We're going to worry about Monday, and then we'll get to Tuesday, and we worry about the process and what we can control, not what everybody's saying and what's going on outside the room. So that's the formula. That's a piece of the formula for guys like Urban Meyer. And I think a lot of that has rubbed off on JT Barrett.